Hi, I'm Anuradha Sengupta with the Media Dialogues. Here, we look at business through the top-line lens. Thanks to the product portfolio and the ability to innovate, the consumer goods sector has weathered the massive disruption created by the COVID-19 pandemic better than others. Barring a few, most of the listed companies have grown annual revenues by at least 10% and upwards. And the headline trend has been the sustained demand for health and wellness products, especially those that use herbal, natural, and Ayurvedic as descriptors. But the second wave of COVID-19 that blindsided us in March and has now spread into rural India will make it very challenging going forward. To understand what to expect, I'm talking to Mohit Malhotra. He's the CEO of Dabur that has over 9,500 crore rupees in annual revenues for the last fiscal and has used its Ayurvedic heritage to create a wide portfolio of new consumer products in the health and immunity boosting categories. Mohit, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you are well.
Great, Anuradha. Likewise. Thank you for having me here in the studios. It's always a pleasure.
Mohit, we will look at exactly what is happening in the environment around us in a bit, but I want to start with looking at the financial year that's just gone by. If someone told you in April, May 2020 that you would end the year with the kind of performance that Dabur has shown in the past year, would you have believed them? Given the kind of lockdown and the experience that we were confronted with?
I'll go a little back in time, which is pre-COVID era. So we as an organization was growing at a high single-digit kind of a growth rate. And when suddenly we encountered this lockdown, actually we all were shocked out of our wits as to what's happened. We were not expecting this lockdown to happen. The entire revenue and the profitability of the company in 1920 fiscal year, really, which is the year before last, because the end of the fiscal year was that, it was severely impacted. And, we are a seasonal company. When I say a seasonal company, we sell some products in the season ending March. We do the loading for juices, and the juices consumption happens in summer, and the summer is yet to peak in the month of April and May. We were not expecting this lockdown. So the business of foods really got impacted, and that's like 20% of our business. And we declined while we were growing YTD February, but just because of the March getting impacted of the loading and the season, we had a major setback on revenues and the profitability. Whatever little control we could do, we tried to do some crisis management, but it wasn't enough, and it dented our numbers. So that was 1920. Coming in 2021, as you know, it's a survival issue because the lockdown continued through the month of April and May, etc., in the COVID year, and in the first wave of COVID year, should I be saying now. So the whole environment changed, and the companies had to be very agile and adapting to the changing business environment. And the business environment was changing by the day, not even say by months, it was changing by the day. So the entire business approach had to be changed. We had to mobilize our teams. We had to put in the best of efforts despite the lockdown restrictions. It was an ethical dilemma with the entire team. At one end, we are asking the team to go out, and the other end, we are asking them to maintain social distancing. So you had to morally re-gear yourself, technology-wise re-gear yourself, effort-wise re-gear yourself, business approach-wise re-gear yourself. Strategy had to be changed. Teams had to be motivated in a different manner. Innovation came in for us. And also we had to adapt to the changing needs of the consumer because the consumer habits were changing. This was a forced change from outside in, which has kind of culturally metamorphosized the company. It's been a cultural metamorphosis for the company seen in the COVID. So therefore, to answer your question, was I surprised? I think I myself is surprised. The street was surprised. We did not know what the outcome of that efforts will be.
You launched some 40 new products in the last year. What was the thinking in identifying that this is the product that you wanted to launch and getting it to market, given that many of these products were in the broad health category, isn't it? Health and wellness category.
We embarked on what we call innovation. And while innovation on the hindsight 2020, we can call it innovation. But actually, at that point in time, it wasn't innovation limb that we went on as an organization. What we went on was being true to the purpose of the company, which is health and well-being being important for the consumers, and that's the source of our survival. That is the larger purpose that Dabur serves: health and well-being of consumers through Ayurveda and making Ayurveda mainstream in. So we said that we have this repository of knowledge, this wisdom, this NPDs in the pipeline. And what better time to serve the consumers at this time and bring them to the fore? So a NPD in Dabur usually takes roughly 2 years or 3 years from creating a concept to it being sent to the R&D, R&D making prototypes, it's coming back, we doing a market research, we refining the proposition, doing a concept product test, CFP, and the whole 9 yards of the protocol that we guys follow as a system. We bypassed that because we had the knowledge and the wisdom, and the products were already there in our ethical division. We said we have to just expand distribution and bring it out there for the consumer to use it and to help them. And that's exactly what we did.
When you look at 40 launches, and they came in to serve a very urgent need that you saw in the market, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the line, do you see all of these continue, and you at Dabur continue to back them with resources, marketing spends, etc.? Or do you see some kind of rationalization that will happen?
Yeah, so there were 2, 3 buckets of new products that we launched. The first largest bucket was the healthcare bucket for us, which is what the need of the consumer was, and it was so contextual that we launched. Now I'll name a few. For example, Tulsi Drop. Tulsi is an immunity booster, and consumers have tea every day in the morning. Just 4 drops of Tulsi drops in the tea that you consume will boost your immunity, and it works well. Ashwagandha tablets. That is what we rolled out. Ayurvedic quartz, which is in a way tea form, that it's a quartz powder that you put in the boiling water and you stir it and it boosts your immunity. Chavanprash, sugar-free, that we guys rolled out. Ratan Prash came in, which is a value-added form of Chavanprash.
So, Mohit, how are you going to review the success of these products, and whether or not to retain all of them, and which one to grow, which one to at some point rationalize?
Yeah, so there was some contextual. So healthcare is more strategic for us. This we will maintain and we will grow and we'll put resources behind it because we view that this will become a long-term sustainable market for us. Some of the home and personal care products like sanitizers, etc., those were more contextual at the time. And as people have stopped going out, we see the market of sanitizers going down. That we will rationalize. Some home care products, which are surface cleaners that we launched, that we will rationalize. Some bits of the portfolio we'll rationalize, which is more home care and more sanitizers, etc. But healthcare is more strategic, which we'll maintain, we'll continue to grow and put resources behind that.
So, and you, like you just said, you are going to base all your healthcare launches on age-old Ayurvedic remedies that you're going to make available to people in modern formats. Now, Mohit, I've got to bring up a controversy here, which is that in recent times, you're all aware of a yoga teacher, Baba Ramdev, who has a great following and who runs a company that rivals yours in the marketplace, make controversial statements about Western medicine, about allopathic medicine. Do you think this has impacted people, your consumers' sentiments towards Ayurveda? And how do you see Indian society and your consumers balance Ayurveda and allopathy in serving their needs?
Yeah, so I think I'll cut to chase to answer your question. So I think earlier Ayurveda used to be considered as an alternative system of medicine. That not Ayurvedic, it's an Indian system of medicine, but with Ayurveda. But allopathic is also a good system. If you actually study the text of Ayurveda, Ayurvedic text mentions that any medicine that benefits you as an ailment is considered as a medicine in the Ayurvedic text. So I will not say allopathy is not Ayurvedic. So allopathy and Ayurveda and homeopathy, they are complementary systems of medicines and they are not rival systems of medicine. As coming to the rival that you mentioned, etc., I don't think there is any rival. I consider Baba Ramdev as an evangelist and he's been a catalyst of Ayurveda in the country. I myself endorse and subscribe and prescribe to a lot of yoga lessons that he gives, being a head of Dabur. So I think there is no rivalry. We actually work together, and it's a very harmonious sort of a working relationships. Ourselves and Patanjali are a part of many industry forums together. And I think it's a very great harmonious working relationship that they are bundling the services along with products. We are a product company. We talk about more scientific testing. And so we've got our own
So you,
areas.
so Mohit, that's interesting to hear. You don't think that some of the claims that some Patanjali products have made, especially with Coronil as cures, you don't see that as being harmful to the perception and understanding and belief in Ayurveda in general as a whole of the people?
See, I would not want to comment and rather here on anybody's drug and what they've done because all the drugs which claim to having cure, they need to be backed up by clinical trial data, and that is based on WHO prescribed norms of clinical trial. So therefore, it has to pass through all the regulatory guardrails that the government is putting in place, and that's for the government to comment or the company to comment. We also have got a lot of products like that, which uh, actually cure moderate kind of COVID illnesses. Like Ayush 64 is Ministry of Ayush prescribed product, which actually cures mild to moderate COVID cases. If the COVID becomes severe and you require ICU and those kind of facilities, which Ayurveda doesn't have today, so therefore I call it more complementary medication.
Is there need at this point, Mohit, to communicate the science and how research and science or scientific processes work in the Ayurvedic field, given that this debate is going on, for some time now, and given that Ayurvedic formulations are something that a company like yours are going full steam ahead to put into the market?
Yeah, so like I told you, there are protocols which the government of India is actually prescribing for the welfare of the consumer so that nobody can come and make tall claims like that. And maybe that's one of the root of the controversy which conflicts with the government regulations. As far as we are concerned, I think we follow the proper protocols of clinical trials before we make any claims. Like on Chyawanprash, we've done proper COVID clinical trial study with COVID patients, and we found that by administering Chyawanprash against a proper control group, there is severity which is 6 times less, and COVID contraction is 12 times less in a group which is consuming Chyawanprash because the immunity levels are much higher. So there is a proper study which is actually conducted and which is prescribed by government and WHO. So Ayurveda is just not a science that we take a plant extract and we claim that it is doing what backed by scientific study and
Right.
which is as robust as maybe a allopathic science would do. But that said, I will say allopathy is definitely a system of medicine that we rely on, and doctors are corona warriors. So we are only complementing that science. We are not contradicting that science at all.
Right. Mohit, you just mentioned the Dabur Chyawanprash and what it can do to combat COVID. Now, that had an ASCII reaction to the claim that was made in advertising. I just saw an ad for Vatika germ protection against germs, including the coronavirus. My question to you, even if you're saying that clinical trials and proper research is being conducted before making these claims, given how fluid our knowledge of coronavirus and the COVID-19 disease is, given that this virus and the way it mutates, the Delta variant and how it has impacted our lives, and we've seen it up close horrifically play out, in the past couple of months. Do you think that companies such as yours should maybe hold back on some of these claims at this point of time because it is so fluid and we don't know how things are changing?
See, it is the studies that we guys conduct, and basis the studies we bake those claims. And if in a study, in a microscopic and an analytical study, I'm not talking about clinical study. If a particular product like soaps, Yeah, when you apply a soap on your hand, and that's why doctors say that you need to apply a soap which has got detergency in it, it definitely kills the virus. That's why they're talking about washing hands. So if a soap is killing coronavirus, and that's what the government of India is saying, so I think we are only spreading awareness. We are in line with what the government wants us to do. If we don't do that kind of advocacy with the public, then those good habits will not get ingrained. So if a shampoo, a frequent shampooing leads to whatever little, if you're going out and if some coronavirus through wind is actually sitting on your head, and if you put a shampoo, and in a shampoo we are putting an active which is killing that virus, and if we make that claim, I don't think there's any harm in it as long as it is following the government protocols, whatever the government is laying out for us. For example, for every soap or for every sanitizer, same applies for a shampoo. And in Chyawanprash, it's Government of India claim. It's Ayush, which is Ministry of Ayush's claim. And whatever they tell us is what we do. We are governed by them.
So,
It's not that we are doing it at our own sweet will.
so you're saying that it is not it should not be seen as opportunistic in advertising communication to use that any product, whatever category it belongs to, will help fight or will help overcome or will help prevent or protect against the coronavirus.
So I will not talk about anybody else or the industry because I don't know what is the backing of the data and the scientific evidence in making their claims. As far as Dabur is concerned, we are a public listed company and we follow the rules and the stipulations and the protocols and the clinical trials, etc., which are laid out as per the government protocols. So I can't comment upon anybody else. As far as ASCI and all are concerned, I would only recommend the autonomous bodies like ASCI to have the right authorities in place who assess advertisements, who know the Ministry of Ayush, who know the specialists, and therefore take calls like those.
Okay. What is interesting in the past year, because of the focus on health and wellness, that a lot of companies, both domestic and global multinational FMCG companies, are looking at the natural space, isn't it? Is that something, do you feel you have to work harder to protect what is Dabur's natural, space?
See, Dabur has got market leadership in most of the spaces where we exist in. And for example, Chyawanprash, we have 50 plus market share. In honey, we are market leaders by a mile. In Lal Tel, Pudin Hara, Honitus, Shilajit, etc. So we are market leaders in most of the categories. And by a mile, we are market leaders. So if the proclivity of the consumer is switching towards natural, herbal, and Ayurvedic products, this only provides us with a tailwind for us to grow forward as a market leader. So we will be beneficiaries of this tailwind. As the pie grows and competitive intensity grows, it only helps the market leader. If the market leader is innovating fast enough and is also ahead of the curve in terms of innovations in appropriating that space. So I think this is only helping us. I don't think we have to work harder. If we in any case have to work harder for us to aspire for higher growth because we are hungry and we are ambitious.
Mohit, let's shift focus now to the second wave of COVID, which we are experiencing still in many parts of the country, even if it's tapered off in the big cities. What is the kind of impact that you're seeing in the interiors of India? Because, I believe at Dabur, 45% of your sales come in from the rural areas.
Yeah, you're right. Around 45 to 49% of our sales actually comes in from the rural areas, and we are continuously developing our rural infrastructure. So that's an entry barrier for us, for any other company to enter into, because Dabur has got a very good rural franchise and rural equity and demand, and we are only bolstering that with the supply chain, making it available to the rural areas. We're reaching out to 60,000 odd villages, and next year going forward, we are looking at 80,000 odd villages. In terms of the second wave of COVID, whatever I speak has got a lot of influence from what you people tell us as media people on what's happening in rural India, and people are getting impacted. But in terms of the business impact that we see in rural markets, I'm not seeing too much of impact happening as of now. And I think if at all the impact is happening in hitting people close because of some of our network of stockists or intermediaries have got impacted, their families have got impacted, and because of that impact, it's an inaction. So the supply chain inaction is there, but the demand is still very strong in the rural areas. I'm not seeing any pinching of the demand happening in the rural areas because of this COVID situation. And if at all the demand will happen, which will have a slow ripple effect, maybe after 1 month or 2 months, we will feel that pinching of the demand happening. But I think there will be a V-shaped recovery because the immunity index of rural India is far better as compared to urban consumer because of their lifestyle. Number one. Number two, the way the population is structured in rural India, it is social distancing by way of the way population or the people are there. So I don't think it's going to be a long-term sustaining impact in rural. And that said, government is, I think, committing to a lot of initiatives, and I must commend the efforts of the government here in terms of MSPs have further been announced despite the limited fiscal headroom which may be available with the government. Still, MSPs are being announced, as you know, MSP has been increased. There is a direct benefit transfer to all the Jandan accounts are happening. Ration transfers are happening. Manrega enrollment is all-time high in rural India. I hope we are able to provide them with. So with all these initiatives, I think we are very well poised for rural India recovery to happen faster. I'm jumping on to urban. Earlier, before the second wave, we found a lot of difference between urban and rural growth rate from syndicated data that we have from Nielsen and other sources, etc. We saw around 1,000 basis points between the urban growth and the rural growth. The rural growth was much higher as compared to urban, and urban was recovering. But post the second wave, this delta between the urban growth and the rural growth has actually shrunk. And in the last quarter, we saw that rural and urban were trending at the same growth in the market, and which was a very good recovery. So while urban comes back and recovers, rural growth was there. Now, if there is a little setback in rural, rural will come back, and I am very hopeful that there will be a V-shaped recovery happening.
In the past couple of months, Mohit, we have seen a sort of, we have seen images from all parts of India of a lot of personal loss, tragedy play out. When you, in this context, we just saw Bihar do an audit, which the Patna High Court had asked them to do, and revise COVID fatalities up to by 70%. When you, in this context, how do you see consumer sentiment? What do you see as the role of a marketer? I mean the marketing function, because the consumer sentiment is so at odds with what you need in order to be able to sell products.
You're absolutely right, Radha. So consumer sentiment has got dampened, and that nobody is shying away from that. And especially what happens is if a percentage of your income is getting into health and well-being space and health and wellness products, obviously there'll be a shrinkage in the disposable income which is available for the discretionary products. So discretionary products will actually show some sort of dampening and growth, and therefore the marketeers will have to work so much more harder as far as the discretionary products are concerned in terms of making them available in low unit accessible price points which the rural consumer can afford. So therefore, if you look at India as a country, 5 rupee price point still is the largest selling price point in the FMCG industry. So more accessible price points will come in, more consumer offers will come in, and I think that's what marketing as a function will have to gear up to ensure. That's in discretionary. In healthcare, of course, there is a tailwind.
Thank you, Mohit. We wish you and your entire team, the Dabur family and all your families, a lot of good luck. Stay safe. Thank you for taking us through what the FMCG sector, as seen from the Dabur lens, has experienced in the past year and will continue to do in the forthcoming one. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Anuradha. It was absolutely a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for watching. Catch us again same time next week, and stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 for all the news meanwhile.